Hi everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another unique romance recommendation video. You guys seem to really like that one. I put up a video a couple weeks ago that was just 6 random romance recommendations. They were books that I had really enjoyed but couldn't necessarily find the right categories to put them into. But I still wanted to recommend them because they were all 5-star books. So I've decided to kind of do that as a series to just be able to talk about the books that I'm either previously really liked and didn't get talked about enough, or again, they don't fit into a particular category, so they don't make it into one of my trope videos. So this is just gonna be, today I have 5 romance recommendations for you. They're all pretty steamy. I have half historical, I have a fantasy romance, and then I have a age gap romance on here as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and dive into these. They're just completely random, so I mean, you can just watch along for the ride, I guess. There's nothing much else to say about that. So I'll start with the historical romances. I know a lot of you are probably participating in the historical romance readathon coming up this weekend. But I'm not officially participating in it or anything, but I'll definitely be following along and hanging out with everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first one I want to talk about is one that I talked about quite a lot last year. It was a historical romance that really just hit a lot of boxes for me, but I feel like I haven't had a reason to talk about it much recently. There's some pretty specific reasons why I love it so much. However, it's one of those that is pretty controversial, not for the content, but just for the way that the characters interact with each other. I don't know, I'll get along with it. So this is the Heir by Grace Burrows. This is the first book in the Wyndham's The Duke's Obsession series. There's this Duke, the Duke of Wyndham, who has well, I don't think he's the Duke of Wyndham because his son is the Duke, so therefore they can't both be the Duke. So I can't remember what his dad is, but and he has a lot of children, and his oldest son is Gale Wyndham, the Duke of Moreland, and this father really wants all of his kids to get married, and not for, well, he needs an heir, so he wants his son to get married and have an heir, but all of his children, he wants them to be as ridiculously happy as he is with his second wife. And so he is a very pushy dad, and he is almost like a society mom, except it's a society dad. And so when we first meet our hero, Gale, his father literally spoke to Gale's mistress and is trying to get her to trap Gale into marriage through an unwanted pregnancy. Okay, so dad is taking big steps because his mistress is already pregnant with one of the other guys that she's seeing, and Gale's father encourages her to say that it's Gale so that he'll have to marry her and they'll have a kid already on the way. So I'm already thinking pretty funny things about this dad. So I'm gonna put this book down now because I have a lot to say and I'm not gonna hold them the whole time. One other caveat warning I want to give before this. Some people are pretty new to my channel. There's always going to be new people all the time. When I am doing videos like this where I'm really talking about a book that I like, expect semi-spoilers, as in what the tropes are in the video, what the major hits and misses of the book are. And so if that's all you want to know, maybe, just hear me, talk about the book a little and skip to the next one, because I do give medium level spoilers, because for me, when I'm deciding what book to read, I need to know more than just what the trope is. There's a million books in every trope that I've read. I need to know what makes this book unique. So sorry to break into it, but I've had a few people comment recently, and I know it's meant just because some other booktubers are very protective of spoilers and want to be respectful that way, and I just don't give a shit. because I want to convince you to read a book. So I'm going to give you more detail than other reviewers might. So just know that about my channel. If you see me talking about a book, I'm never going to give away the main plot points unless I'm doing a spoiler review or I warn you, but I'm going to tell you a lot about the book because I want you to read it. Okay? Sorry for that spiel, but let's get back into it. So anyway, so that happens to Gale. So Gale, obviously, he has to break up with his mistress. He's more mad with his dad than he is with the mistress. And so he decides to move in back to the country. I can't remember which way he's going, but either I think he'd been spending time in town, and then he moves out to his country estate. And a new housekeeper has been hired while he was gone. He needed a new like housekeeper and someone to run his household in the country estate. And this woman named Anna gets hired. And with her, Anna brought a scullery maid with her as well, who is deaf. And so one morning, she is working on the fire in the room, and the girl, being deaf, didn't know that he was in the room when she came in. And so she's working on the fire grate, and her button of her dress gets stuck in the grate. And so Gale comes up behind her to help her. And because she can't, it might not be that she's completely deaf, but she's mute. That might be what it is, because she's kind of like whimpering and making noises and stuff, and he's trying to help her, but she's not like listening to him, that he's like, I'm trying to help you. And so he's literally like around her trying to like help her, and then he gets brained in the head with a fire poker. And it's Anna, his housekeeper, who did it because she thought he was assaulting this chambermaid. And instead of immediately freaking out and firing Anna, which is what Anna expects, Gale says, hey, I realize what this probably looked like to you. You don't know that I would never do that. You might have worked with other places where the master of the house would, assault a chambermaid. And so he's very good-natured about this, and says, however, as your punishment, you're going to be at my beck and call for the next couple of weeks because you gave me a concussion, and I want to punish you just a little bit for jumping to conclusions. And so he kind of gets on her case for a little while, and immediately there's attraction between the two of them. And number one, he's her boss. Number two, they are very different in class. And number three, Anna has some major secrets that she's carrying. And now, the secrets that Anna is carrying, and the reason why I'm okay with things where other people who've read this book are not, is that the secret that Anna is carrying is a life or death secret, okay? It is a big deal. Granted, I don't think she understands how much Gale could help her, that Gale could fix everything, but she doesn't trust easily, and she also doesn't want to bring any bad juju down on him or cause any problems for him. But there is a life or death secret that Anna's keeping. And so when eventually the passions between them bubble up and they start an affair with each other, he is very adamant about, just marry me. Like, I don't care that you're a servant. I have feelings for you. This happens pretty soon on in the book that they start this. So again, I'm not like, it says that on the back of the book that they're starting something between them. She refuses. And it's something that's very frustrating for some people that read this book because I talked about it back in the day. And for me, I accepted it. The thing that is hard is that this book is this book is 460 pages, which is very long for a historical romance. Most of them are about 300 to 400 pages. So some of those things go on for a little bit too long. Next, the second reason why this book is so important to me, and the time when I first read this book, I did a very emotional wrap up about it, and I cried, is because Gale is physical touch. I recently just talked about this in another book as well, and I will in other books. Physical touch is my love language, And your love language is not just something that's expressed between lovers. It is between friends and family members, and it's how you get shown care and affirmation is through physical touch. And so for me, when that becomes apparent about Gale, like there is many times between him and Anna, between him and his father, between him and his brother, where they're showing affection to each other. And Gale will have comments about how like it just feels right when he's able to hold Anna. And there's a lot of times where she's upset or he's upset and he doesn't need sexual, he doesn't need sexual things. He just needs touch. And it was very obvious to me that whether the author purposely knew that this was a thing or it was natural for her to write it maybe, the love language was so obvious in it. And my favorite scene I always mention is, I think she's checking the wound in his head. It's been a couple days. And so he's sitting down and she's standing in front of him, like leaning over to check his head. And he just puts his head against her stomach and his hands on her hips, and he just relaxes into her and like almost falls asleep just touching her. When he has like kind of a confrontation with his father, his dad is touching him, and like that, even today, like I feel like that happens more often, but in that time period, that just wasn't a thing. So those are the things I really love. There's also a huge family we're getting introduced to. I've only read the first and the second book in the series because I just keep getting distracted from it. But he has 2 other brothers who are also in this. And then there's a series that's about all the sisters finding love. And so I was very impressed with the Heir. And if you love historical romances, if you are physical touch, if you know what love languages are, I really suggest you give this a try because it was a very important book to me. So you can see why I only talk about 5 books in these videos, because I can really rant about it. So the next historical romance I want to talk about that's a little unique, but the author shouldn't surprise you since I talk about her all the time, is The Wicked Deeds of Daniel Mackenzie. Okay, let's show this to you. Here we go. This is beautiful. This is actually the longest one in the series as well. This book is, I think it's book 7 in the series, or 6. Yeah, it's 6 in the series, but all of these can kind of be read as a standalone, except maybe this one, because Daniel is the son of one of our other brothers, and so you could just jump into this and be fine because it's historical romances. You can read them out of order. It's okay. But to get the most out of it, you should read the other parts because we get to see Daniel grow up and see what kind of a man he is. And by the time it gets to his book, I was super excited. But in regards to me doing random book recommendations, I'm going to say that you can read this when you want to. And this is about Daniel, who he has kind of a reputation for being a little bit scandalous, but we also know that he's a sweetie. Again, if you've read some of the other ones, he has a younger sister and a younger brother, I think, that he just adores them. He loves his stepmother, who's actually only 8 or 9 years older than him. And he was raised by his father because his mother had serious postpartum depression, and she also spiraled into madness, and she tried to kill Daniel on multiple occasions before killing herself. And so Daniel's father, Cameron, was able to protect him from a lot of that, but it's still kind of a burden that he carries. So we meet Daniel when he's at a poker night, because it is called The Wicked Deeds of him. And a man at the game ends up losing a lot of money to Daniel. And so as payment, he offers to let him meet his, I can't remember the name that they call her, spiritual medium. So Violet Bastion is a spiritual medium. She is actually, a fraud, but her mother, it is undetermined if her mother is actually a medium or not. She does make a lot of predictions correctly. And Violet is the one who takes care of her mother, and they are kind of currently being owned by this one guy. They're renting from him. And so to pay Daniel back for the money he owes him, he takes him to see Violet. And though he completely doesn't believe that Violet is, you know, a medium, he's amazed by all the inventions that she uses to make her place, to make it seem like the spirits are coming. Because Daniel is an inventor, and we've seen him in a lot of different, like, situations in previous books where, like, him and Ian have invented some things together, and he's just really smart that way. And so he's fascinated by all of her inventions that, like, make, you know, wind come through and, like, make boards creak and everything. And so he's very intrigued by her. When Violet, then Daniel, like, kind of makes a move on her, and she had been assaulted, so there's trigger warnings for assault in here. And so he really just makes a move to kiss her. It's funny that I picked 2 books where someone gets knocked out. She knocks him out. He hadn't done anything she wasn't okay with yet, but she panics, has a flashback, and she knocks him out. And she takes him to where he'll be taken care of, but she takes some money from him, and her mother have to go on the run because she knows that she'll get put in jail for this. She doesn't know what kind of man Daniel is, and so she goes on the run. Daniel eventually wakes up and goes after her because he is so intrigued by this woman, and he feels bad that he scared her because he knows that's what happened, and he goes after her. And so when he finds her again, he says, "You can pay me back by letting me check out your inventions. After all, you did almost kill me, stole my money, and though you didn't leave me for dead, you didn't leave me in too good of a case." And so Violet and Daniel begin this amazing, like, kind of like friendship slash a roundabout thing. Like, Daniel likes hot air balloons and motor cars, and he wants to use one of her inventions to help make the hot air balloon, like, better than it currently is. And so they just start on this adventure together. And I thought it was so unique because Violet is also an inventor, obviously. She is so smart and brave, and she's been taking care of her and her mother for a very long time because her mother is very dependent upon her, because when her mother isn't doing a show, she is in almost like, she's in a very weakened state, right? So Violet ends up getting kind of taken in by the Mackenzies and just loved more than she could have ever expected. So that's a pretty unique romance. Really, you should read the entire Mackenzie series. It starts with the madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie, which I know you've heard of 101 times from me. It's one of Jess's favorite books. Everyone who's read it, I haven't really heard anyone who disliked Ian unless you didn't like historical romances. So you really should check out the Mackenzie brothers because they're all awesome, and the books are really sexy and dark and fantastic. So I have one more historical romance to talk about that's pretty unique, and that is One Night is Never Enough by Anne Mallory. So this book I heard of on the Fated Mates podcast, and as soon as they started describing it, I knew I needed it right now. So this book is about Roman, who is kind of like the king of the underworld. Him and 2 of his comrades run a gambling hell, as well as they're in control of everything that happens in the London Underground. Roman catches he doesn't catch her eye. He sees her. Her name is Charlotte. He sees her about town one day, and he makes it his business to find out who she is, who her family is, and how he can get his hands on her. So he quickly finds out that her father frequents the gambling hell, and so Roman goes about getting into a poker game with him, or it's probably not poker, but imagine something like that, and makes the man desperate enough that Roman puts a night with Charlotte out on the table and says he will forgive a vast majority of this man's debt if Roman can have one night with Charlotte. So Charlotte's dad is kind of an ass, and he's really horrible to her and her older sister, and he is planning to give Charlotte to Roman for one night. It ends up being Charlotte's choice because she knows she could get away. Like, she could leave, she could run. But she's willing to do this to help wipe out her family's debt so things could be better for her mother and her sister. So she agrees to go spend a night with Roman. So after they kind of like, they keep it a secret as she gets to where he plans to meet her, and she's like, wow, I'm gonna like either get raped or have sex this night, and she's very anxious about it and worried. And then she meets Roman, and Roman has no interest in taking someone against their will. He has no interest in forcing himself on her, but he begins a full-scale seduction. And the way he begins this seduction is by spending the entire night playing chess with Charlotte and just working her into a frenzy with his words and his eyes and his charisma. And he never even touches her until the end of the night. He kisses her once and then leaves. And this has Charlotte hook, line, and sinker. So then it's just a matter of Roman kind of stalking her, but in a like, he's watching over her, as well as he finds times to sneak by her and leave her notes. Like, he leaves her notes in the craziest places. So because he was raised on the streets, so he will go in disguise and he'll like bump into her in a market, and then when she gets home, she'll find a note in her cleavage, or one in her bag, or one in her pocket, and all without her like, she'll like feel his presence but never see him. And he just leaves all these notes for her, and they just say things like soon, or I'll have you soon. And they are just driving her sexually crazy. And this book is so intriguing, and Roman just had me so aroused through all of this, because he knew the game that he was playing, and it is a game. Like, he knows that he's seducing her, but he does it in such a way where like she knows it too. Like, she's like, oh my God, he's seducing me. Why can't I stop being excited about finding these notes? And like, why am I feeling this way? And meanwhile, like, her father's still trying to marry her off for money, because he, you know, still owes other people money, not just Roman. And so there are other suitors coming into play, and there's just a lot going on. But I love this book. Roman is so sexy, and I've discovered I really do like reading about not dukes or earls or rich lords. Like, I really like when they're men of the streets, or they were previously killers or assassins. I actually have a video. The next video I make is gonna be killer and assassins in romance novels. There's just something about those men who weren't raised with money and either like earned it through nefarious means, or they fight for everything that they have. And I just love that. So definitely check out One Night is Never Enough by Anne Mallory. Really good. All right, next I want to talk about this one is a contemporary romance. This is an age gap. It's a taboo age gap, and that is The Doctor by Nikki Sloan. This book is a ex-boyfriend's dad romance, which you know how I feel about those. Nikki Sloan is someone who has inspired Katie Robert, and I just love that so much. It makes me so happy. If you really like really smutty contemporary romance, in fact, like almost on erotic with like taboo themes to it, you'll really enjoy Nikki Sloan. And she's not taboo in the straight up like, you know, like Kay Webster is, but a lot of her books are on that edge where you're like, there's something about this that still gets my gut tightening up. So The Doctor is about Cassidy, and Cassidy has been in a pretty long-term relationship with Greg Lowe's son. I think his son's name is, I can't remember the kid's name because I don't care. But him and Cassidy have been together for a while. In fact, they've been together longer than Greg's son has been living with him, because Greg, he's a doctor. That's why it's called The Doctor. And he hasn't spent a ton of time with his son. And it's only in the last couple of years when his son's been going to college that his son's been living with him. And so Cassidy just lives a little ways away. She's been at his house quite a lot because obviously she was dating his son. And things with her boyfriend go awry. He starts only wanting to see her for sex. He isn't there for her emotionally. He didn't come to her aunt's funeral. He only plays video games, and he's just really rude and hurtful. And so even on like the day that she breaks up with him, he like doesn't even listen. He doesn't, you know, even acknowledge that she really broke up with him. And then we have Greg, who has been watching how his son has been treating Cassidy, and he's very unhappy with it. And in fact, he knows that his son cheated on Cassidy. So he tries to warn her, which she already is like breaking up with him. But he doesn't want to betray his son because that relationship is so new. But he sees that Cassidy is a great girl, and he just can't stand the thought of her, you know, not being treated well. So they end up kissing one of the times she stops by. There's just been this tension between them, and they kiss, and things just explode from there. This isn't a super long book. Also, this is a little less complicated of a plot to explain than the previous ones I was talking about, but I just love it so much. I really like this, this like daddy king kind of thing. You know that too. I love those. But I like the ex's dad. Just is such a fun taboo thing. And also Greg is just, he's a sweetie. And I like that sometimes too. Like, I like when it can be a taboo story, but yet the characters are so lovable and likable that it doesn't make the story feel like icky or wrong in any way. So even though, you know, this man is quite a bit older than her, he's still like so kind, and he's so he's a generous lover, all those things that, you know, a 20-year-old hasn't experienced yet, right? But there's a lot of extra layers going on because he hasn't been in his son's life for very long. He doesn't want to ruin any connection they might be building now. But it's going to be really hard for him because his son is kind of a prick right now. So there's that. But you should definitely check this book out. I think I bought this one because Nikki Sloan doesn't really have her, I don't think her books are on Kindle Unlimited, but I got this one for just like a couple bucks because it's like novella length. It's only like 180 pages or so, but it's good. It's really, that's one of the like double-edged swords about Nikki Sloan, is she doesn't overplay her welcome, which is hard for me sometimes too because I just want more and more, but she never like overdoes it, is what I would say. All right, so the last book I want to talk about is the inspiration for this video. As always, there's usually one video I really have, or one book I really have in mind when I make a video like this, and then I'll like pick other books that I haven't talked about in a while. But this one is a recent read for me. It's a recent release. It's on Kindle Unlimited, and it is a fantasy, it's a high fantasy romance, and that is A King So Cold by Ella Field. This book I would consider a mix of like, Akamath with like a Game of Thrones vibe mixed with like Fortuna Sworn. Like I was really getting Fortuna Sworn vibes, even though the story is completely different, because the main character, she really appears like a villainess in a lot of ways. And I mean, we're in her point of view, so you don't hate her, but she was kind of unlikable for a lot of it for me until I got the full picture, okay? So the author walks a really fine line of making her seem unlikable until you learn the full story. The good part is that we're promised the full story right from the beginning. So here's the setup for this book. This is about the Queen of the Winter Court. Her name is Audra. She's been the queen for just a few years now. We're actually introduced to her while she is fucking with her fuck buddy, whose name is Zad, who has a political alliance formed with him. He's from her own court, but he's a pretty high-ranking lord, and he has a lot of property that it's his own, and they are, you know, probably going to be married to each other, but there's a hitch. The queen still has a king. The Winter King is the former Summer Court prince, and he has been banished to the Outer Lands and had his memory wiped because he betrayed the queen on their wedding day And as his punishment, she wiped his memories and banished him. And on this day that we are introduced to our queen, her king is about to be married to someone else. Like, it's his wedding day, and he's going to marry someone else. And the queen can't stand for that. She can't stand to be made a mockery of, because though the king doesn't know who he is anymore, number one, the woman marrying him knows who he is and knows what a bitch she's being by doing this. And number two, the queen can't see him be happy after what he's done to her, even though he doesn't remember what he did. So she rides her beast, which I just picture as a dragon. I don't think it's a dragon. It's some other flying creature, but she flies off to the spot, literally drops down outside of the church, goes in, drags him out, throws him in the dungeon. His name is Raiden, by the way, and says, "You are going to remember what you did to me, and then I'm going to kill you." And he's just like, "Bitch, I don't know who you are. Why did you ruin my wedding day? Why are you such a crazy woman coming in to ruin the happiness I was finding?" And she's like, "Oh, you bastard don't even know what you did to me, but you're going to remember." And thus begins Audra retelling her love story with Raiden to him. And so this was supposed to be a political alliance by her father, the Winter King, who was crazy and evil and probably killed Audra's mother, but he's the only, parental guiding figure that she's had. In the Winter Court, they're all pretty hard and heartless. So she just has accepted that her father is that kind of man. And Raiden, his parents, and the Winter King had set up a political alliance between the Summer and the Winter Court, and Audra is supposed to marry Raiden. And we're introduced to her when she's 18, and so this is like supposed to have been like 4 or 5 years ago from present time. And we get to see Raiden and her fall in love, all the while knowing how it will end. So the big questions that loom are, what did Raiden do that was so betrayed her? How did she actually fall in love with him? Because nobody believes she could love anyone. And what are we going to do about it? But this is only the first half of this book. And what I can't tell you, even though I go deeper than other people go, is that there is a lot more going on right now. This book does have a love triangle going on, because that fuckboy we met at the beginning, Zad, he is not just a sex buddy. There is much more to him than meets the eye. He is actually a very viable choice for our queen, but no matter what feelings she's starting or not having for Zad, the Winter King, for her to marry someone else, would either need to agree to a separation, because that's how they have divorce then, or die. And since Raiden doesn't know who he is, he can't consent to the divorce, and she won't kill him until he knows who he is. So that's the pickle we're in. That's where everything's sitting at. It's fantastic. All right, some other reasons. This is very sexy. We start the book after a sex scene, which I was already like, oh boy, goody. The sex isn't full graphic, so if I would say it's less graphic than Sarah J. Maas in like Akamath or like, Kingdom of Ash. So if you've read those and are okay with that level of it, you'd be fine. If you're looking for more like hardcore than that, I still think it works because it's very sexy and there's lots of it spread throughout. So obviously I was okay with it, and I'm like all sex all the time, please. The magic is not super well defined, but used quite a bit. There is lots of like our main, some of the main problems we're having are like kingdoms not agreeing with each other. This alliance between Summer and Winter didn't work. So there's problems happening with Raiden's court, who is angry that the queen, wiped their king's memory. So he doesn't remember that he is he's their prince. He was going to be the Summer courts or the Winter court's king, but he was their prince. And her dad is gone and his parents are gone. So what happened to them? And yeah, there is a few warnings, I would say, in this one. There is threat of rape, there is assault, and there is gore. Like, there's some viscera in this book, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it made this very clear that this was a brutal, vicious, Fae society, and I'm here for that. So this book, I want to hype train this one because whenever I find a self-published book that gets me this excited, I'm very happy. This, well, I wouldn't quite hold it up to A Heart of Blood and Ashes just because the world that author is building, like Milla Vane is building, I'm in love with so much. There will be a sequel to this book that is about one of the characters in this book that I won't tell you because it's a spoiler how they like end up in this. But I love this book so much. I read it in one night. I stayed up very late to finish it and I adored it. Heard some people don't, but their reasons for not liking it don't matter to me. So there you go. All right, there you go. That is 5 more unique romances I think you should check out. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know if you've read any like these that you would like to suggest to me, because I feel like they're just so random. Like I mean, yeah, they fit into certain tropes. Like there's a, Marriage in Trouble, you could consider a King So Cold. The Heir, you consider that like a hidden identity book. One Night Is Never Enough, you consider as like Hate to Love if you want it. But they barely fit into those categories because there's so much more going on in them. And I love that so much. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this book up. You know how I love to prattle on. Make sure if you're interested, you check out the links in my description for the romance Discord channel. We have over 100 people on Booktube and Booktube watchers who are a part of this. There's book recs, there is read-alongs, there is we share book sales that are happening on there. So make sure you check that out. You won't regret it. As well as my own personal Discord where I run the Taboo Book Club with my friend Tamika at Library of Tomes. That's something new that's just started this month. So make sure you check out those links down below if you're someone who, you feel like you're not connecting enough with the Booktube community, or you like the books that I read and want to find more people who like that. That's what you're going to find in the romance Discord. So thank you so much for watching. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week and you can watch some more of them.